Last month, I watched Villeneuve's Dune in IMAX, and especially, it could be the best film of the 2021. And it could be the first sci-fi film to win an Academy Award for Best Picture, and Denis Villeneuve could be the first French-Canadian director to win an Academy Award for Best Director. In collaboration, there was one project that one man wanted to adapt to this sci-fi epics, but it's failed. In this first episode of a film that I want to see, but it's never made, we will tell the story of the infamous attempt to adapt Frank Herbert masterpiece to be a big screen, and the Cancellation. This is the stories behind Jodorowsky's Dune.
Is science fiction really fiction, or is it just the future waiting to happen? Author Frank Herbert says it's a little bit of both. His books, under the Dune title, takes us to a strange planet where life and death is determined by a spice, which is carefully doled out by a leader who is a humanoid in the process of becoming a worm. Now before I ask you about the statement of that, Frank, why is there a tendency for people to chuckle when they hear what I just said, to sneer, to smirk?
Well, I think it makes people uncomfortable, the idea that a human being can become something other than a human being, especially something mindless out of the depths. I'm very heavily imbued with Jungian psychology, so I think that we do have a sense of the mindless animal in the depths of all of us.
But science fiction, when people say science fiction, they automatically go, ah.
Yeah, but I write science fiction for people who don't read science fiction. And people who read science fiction also.
But you were just telling me that you were going after that general readership.
Oh, yes.
But you were frankly a little bit surprised when it went over as big as it did. Why?
Well, I didn't... You don't wait for that. You go on to do another story. And then when it happened big, and I was very surprised by how big it came along.
You've said science fiction writing can have a missionary impact. Could you elaborate on that for me a little bit?
Well, I think it first has to be entertaining, because if it's not entertaining, nobody's going to read it. I put a pot of message in there with a mess of pottage.
What is the message? What is the statement that you're attempting to make here?
Don't trust leaders to always be right. I worked to create a leader in this book who would be really an attractive, charismatic person, for all the good reasons, not for any bad reasons. Then power comes to him. He makes decisions. Some of his decisions, made for millions of people, millions upon millions of people, don't work out too well.
In a general sense, not in a specific one about Leto and about planet Arrakis, but in a very general sense, do you make this statement because you're disenchanted with the way others are viewing the future or preparing for the future?
Well, I think that our society was formed on a distrust for government, and we seem to have lost that distrust of government. I kid around and I say that my favorite president in recent years has been Richard Nixon, because he taught us to distrust government.
What is it, that government is a shared illusion, and when the myth dies,
yes. the
government disappears?
That's right.
Religion, government, other institutions, do you see them in any way preparing for what Frank Herbert sees as the vision of the future?
No, I have a very passionate concern for posterity. Another thing upon which this nation was founded, with a decent concern for posterity. And unfortunately, posterity doesn't vote.
Dune is going to become a Dino De Laurentiis movie.
That's right.
That Frank Herbert has written the screenplay for. Are we to expect another Star Wars type spectacle?
I really am expecting much more of a David Lynch movie. David has really written the screenplay. I hope he's using a lot of the stuff that I gave him, but I haven't seen the screenplay. It'll be ready next Friday. We are expecting the movie in a year, at the end of '83.
How many more Dunes to come?
At least one more.
Good enough. Frank Herbert, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Frank Herbert was an American novelist and journalist living in California. After publishing the Dragon in the Sea novel in 1957, he traveled to Florence, Oregon, at the north end of the Oregon Dune. Here, the United States Department of Agriculture attempted to use poverty glasses to stabilize the sand dune. In a letter to his Italy agent, Lieutenant Ballinsgame, Herbert claimed that the moving dune could swallow whole cities, lakes, rivers, highways. Herbert's articles on the dunes "They Stop the Moving Sand" was never complete, and only published decades later in The Road to Dune. But its research sparked Herbert's interest in ecologies and desert culture around the world. He is also interested in the ideas of the superheroes, mystics, and messiah. He believes that feudalism was a natural condition humans fell into, where some late and author gave up their responsibility of making decisions and just followed order. He found that desert environments have historically given birth to several major religions with messianic impulse. He decided to join his interests together so he could play religious and ecological ideas against each other. In addition, he was influenced by the stories of T.E. Lawrence and the Messianic overtone. T.E. Lawrence was a British Army general who helped the Arabs fight against the Ottoman Empire during the World War I, which brought Herbert to write the novel that will become one of the most influential English-language novels, called Dune. Published as a three-part serial, Dune were in Analog magazine between December of 1963 to February of 1964. He published the much slower-paced 5-part The Prophet of Dune in January to May 1965 issues. The serialized version was expanded, reworked, and submitted to more than 20 publishers, each of whom rejected it. Then, in the August of 1965, Dune was published by Chilton Book, a printing house known for publishing auto repair manual. The novel follows Paul Atreides, a son of Duke Leto Atreides and Lady Jessica, who was sent to control the desert planets of Arrakis, also known as Dune in the novel. But it's a plan that the emperors and royal houses of Harkonnens, led by sadistic Vladimir Harkonnens, wants the Atreides to be collapses. The novel was very successful and won numerous awards, including Hugo and Lubera Awards for Best Novel. In 1971, Arthur P. Jacobs optioned the rights to film Dune, as Jacobs was busy with other projects such as the sequels of Planets of the Apes. Dune got delayed for another year. Jacobs' first choice for director as David Lynch, a British film director known for his work like Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, and The Bridge of River Kwai, to direct Dune, but he turned down the offer. Charles Jarrott was also considered to be directed. Work was also underway on the script, whilst he hunts for a director continued. Initially, the first treatment has been handled by Robert Greenhut, the producers who had lobbied Jacobs to make the movie first. Still, subsequently, Roswell Plalenberg was approached to write the script. Shooting secluded to begin in 1974. However, Jacobs died in 1973. In December of 1974, two French film producers, Jean-Paul Gibbon and Michel Seydoux, purchased the film rights from APJ. Michel Seydoux was not a very well-known name, but if I said he was the grandfather of one of the most beautiful French actresses of all time, Léa Seydoux.
My name is Léa Seydoux. I was born in Paris. I'm a real Parisian. As a kid, I was always singing and sometimes performing in front of my parents, but I didn't really know that I wanted to be an actress. I met a guy and he was an actor, and I found his life amazing, and I wanted to have his life more than to be an actress, and that's how I started. I met his agent.
Yeah, she's really beautiful. Yeah, she's look like a young Jodie Foster. Now, let's go back to Dune. After they purchase the film's rights, they bring Alejandro Jodorowsky set to direct. Jodorowsky was a Chilean expatriate living in Paris. He was infamous for surrealism, brutal sex and violent scenes, and using of draft and disabled people in daily movies. One of my favorite Jodorowsky's films is a 1970 cult hit, El Topo, a western film telling the adventures of father and son, like Lone Wolf and Club Manga. In 1975, Jodorowsky plans to film the stories as a 10-hour feature, set to star his son Francis Jodorowsky in the lead role of Paul Atreides, Dali as Shaddam IV, Amanda Lear as Princess Irulan, Orson Welles as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, Gloria Swanson as Revenant's mother Gaius Helen Moham, David Carradine as Duke Leto Atreides, Garena Chaplin as Lady Jessica, Alonso DeLong as Jonathan Idaho, Harvey Leches as Gurney Halleck, Udo Kier as Peter DeVries, and Mick Jagger, the lead singer of my favorite band Rolling Stones, as Pete Rauta Harkonnen. It was as first proposed to score the film with original music by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, Henry Kaut, and Magma. Later on, the soundtrack was to be provided by Pink Floyd, set up a pre-production until in Paris consisting of Chris Foss, a British artist who designed covers for science fiction periodical, Mobius, a French illustrator who created and also wrote and drew for Metro Goran magazines, and H.R. Giger. Jodorowsky wants to shoot these films in the deserts of Algeria, with the Algerian army as extra. Mobius created over 3,000 storyboard illustrations based on the script, including Paul being murdered and transforming into the sentient plant. H.R. Giger designed the sandworm. Giger's sandworm was looking like a tank or even a killing machine, or quite to be a BDSM style. In 1976, Herbert traveled to France to find that $2 million of the $9.5 million budget has already been spent in pre-production, and that Jodorowsky's script would result in a 14-hour movie. Jodorowsky took creative liberties with the source material, but Herbert said he and Jodorowsky had amicable relationships. Then bad things happened. The reasons that caused these productions to collapse are its limited budgets, from which were spent $2 million solely during pre-production, and the final draft of the script, which would result in that 14-hour movies, whilst Hollywood did not want the films to exist 2 hours. Furthermore, the industry was still untrustful of the commercial viability of movie, with the proportions of Dune, which caused the director to shut down production. In Jodorowsky's own words, the project was sabotage in Hollywood. It was a French and not American. Its message was not enough Hollywood. There were intrigues, ponderings, the storyboards circulated among all the large studio. After Dune was cancelled, Jodorowsky used some of the ideas from Dune to write his graphic novel, The Incal, which became one of the greatest sci-fi graphic novels ever written and won numerous awards. H.R. Giger's design was inspired by Dean O'Bannon Alien film script. Around 1981, Ridley Scott was hired to direct a film adaptation of Dune. However, he turned on and directed Blade Runner.
It was a matter now of getting into it. We tried to get Ridley from the outset, but he was at that point planning to do Dune.
As I was mixing Alien, Michael Dealey had come to see me at EMI, and I'd known Dealey from his days with EMI. And he said, I got this script, called Blade Runner, and I said, I don't really want to do another science fiction, I just finished one. So but I'll read it. I read the script, which is Hampton Fancher. It was called Dangerous Days, and I turned it down.
Ridley Scott was going to be the original director on Dune, and Dino De Laurentiis hired him. And their sets were being built. They were going to shoot it, and it was going to be based on the novel, and it was going to be this large-scale science fiction film.
I was attracted to Dune because it was beyond what I'd done on Alien, which was kind of hardcore, kind of horror film. And Dune would be a step very strongly, very, very strongly in the direction of Star Wars.
At this point, something rather sad happened, which is that Ridley's older brother died rather young, obviously, and Ridley was in some depression. He really had to get to work, got to do something. When he's working, he's working.
In the 1984, American film director David Lynch adapted Dune novel to be a big screen, starting with Clive McLachlan as Paul Atreides. The film was considered to be the worst film of 1984. Many Dunes fans hate it. The film was a box office bomb, grossing $30.9 million from a $40 million budget, and was negatively reviewed by the critics. Upon release, Lynch disowned the final film, stating that pursuit from producer and financier restricted his artistic controls and denied him the final cut privilege. At least 3 versions have been released worldwide. In some cuts, Lynch's name was replaced in the credit with Alan Smith, a pseudonym name used by the director who wished not to be associated with the film, for which they would usually be credited. However, Lynch Dune became a cult classic, but for me, Lynch Dune is the most shittiest Dune adaptation of all time. Aspects such as Jodorowsky's ambitious idea, intense casts, and the name invited during production would make the final movie notorious over the year. In 2013, the documentary titled Jodorowsky's Dune was released, critically acclaimed by critics and viewers. To this day, Alejandro Jodorowsky was 92 years old and was still active. The reasons that Jodorowsky's Dune never made it is the developing health and spent too much money on the project, and many more of it. But for me, if his granddaughter, Alma Jodorowsky, played in the roles of Princess Iruant in Dune Part 2, he would be happy about that. And that is the video. This is entirely the first non-narco content of this channel. Of course, I love to watch the film and some of the movies that I want to watch, but it's not made. It's quite really sad for me. But if you like my video, please like and subscribe to me. But if some parts is inaccurate, then I will be sorry about that. And goodbye.